The vast chamber of the alien council was abuzz with tension. The dimly lit room was filled with a diverse array of alien species, each representing a member of the intergalactic alliance. The delegates were anxious, their eyes fixed on the holographic display at the center of the room, which projected images of the devastating conflict against the Zarlak Dominion. For too long, this relentless enemy had swept through their territories, obliterating colonies and enslaving entire species. Now, their forces stood at the gates of the last Allied stronghold. "We're running out of options," grumbled Jaxar, a hulking insectoid delegate whose antennae twitched with agitation. "If the Zarlak breach our defenses, we are doomed. We need a new strategy, one that they won't see coming." The assembly murmured in agreement. No one wanted to admit it, but they had exhausted their own tactical ideas. The Zarlak Dominion's forces were too numerous, their technology too advanced, their ruthlessness unmatched. They needed a miracle. From the shadows at the back of the chamber, a voice rang out. "Perhaps it's time we called in an expert." The speaker was Talus Vorn, an elder member of a species known for their wisdom and strategic insight. He had been silent during most of the discussion, observing the growing panic in the room. But now, he leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a new determination. "I propose we bring in a human," he announced, letting the statement hang in the air. The reaction was immediate. Alien representatives looked at each other, some with confusion, others with thinly veiled disdain. The Alliance had rarely cooperated with humans, considering them unpredictable and, at times, reckless. Jaxar clicked his mandibles together in irritation. "A human? We're on the brink of annihilation, and you want to bring in an unpredictable species?" "Yes," Talus replied, unfazed. "Humans are unconventional. They think differently, and there is one in particular who has earned a reputation for turning the tide of hopeless battles. They call him the Unseen Hand. He has never lost a campaign." The murmurs grew louder as Talus pulled up a holographic profile of the human general, detailing his past victories, his unorthodox methods, and the admiration he had earned from those who had fought beside him. "He could be our last hope," Talus said, his tone firm. "If anyone can find a way to outsmart the Zarlak, it's him." Reluctantly, the council conceded, authorizing Talus to extend the offer. The stakes were too high, and the Alliance was too desperate to ignore any potential advantage. A week later, in the hangar bay of the Alliance's last stronghold, a shuttle touched down. As the ramp lowered, the figure of a man emerged, clad in worn combat armor with a distant yet piercing gaze. He was tall, with dark hair streaked with gray, and bore the marks of countless battles. His expression was calm, almost detached, as if the galaxy's most ruthless war weighed no more heavily on him than a mere skirmish. The alien commanders greeted him with a mix of respect and suspicion. "General Torres," Talus Vorn said, stepping forward, "welcome to our final stand." Maya Torres took in his surroundings, his sharp eyes assessing every detail. He noted the weariness in the soldiers, the hastily constructed defenses, and the bleak expressions of the officers who awaited his guidance. He offered a faint smile, one that was both reassuring and disconcerting. "So, you've brought me here to save your people from the Zarlak," Torres said. "Tell me everything you know about their tactics." Over the next few hours, Torres pored over the Alliance's intelligence on the Zarlak. He listened intently to the reports of their tactics, studied their battle patterns, and dissected their strengths and weaknesses. The Zarlak were not just fierce warriors. They were methodical, relentless, and terrifyingly efficient. Yet, Torres remained unperturbed. As the alien commanders continued to express their doubts, Torres outlined his initial plan. "The Zarlak believe they're invincible. We need to exploit their arrogance and make them overextend. We'll set up a series of traps, guerrilla-style ambushes that will whittle down their forces. But that will put our troops in extreme danger," Jaxar protested, his voice dripping with skepticism. "We're not equipped for prolonged guerrilla warfare." "We don't need prolonged guerrilla warfare," Torres replied coolly. "Just enough to destabilize them. Then we draw them into a trap they won't see coming." Torres assigned each species a role based on their unique strengths, directing the insectoid warriors to dig tunnels and prepare ambush sites, while the telepathic species relayed real-time intel across the battlefield. Every detail was meticulously planned, yet Torres remained mysterious about the final stage of his strategy, hinting only that it would require a precise combination of timing and cunning. The alien commanders exchanged wary glances, unsure if they could trust him but feeling a strange sense of hope. Torres was unlike any leader they had encountered. He was calm, calculating, and willing to take risks they would never have considered. As the planning session concluded, Torres addressed the gathered forces. "I won't lie to you. This battle will be brutal. But if you follow my lead and trust in the plan, we will give the Zarlak a fight they'll never forget." The aliens nodded, a spark of determination igniting in their eyes. They knew the odds were still stacked against them, but for the first time in months, they had a sliver of hope. With the battle looming, Torres returned to his quarters, where he spent the night reviewing tactics and analyzing every potential scenario. He knew that the Zarlak were not to be underestimated, but he also knew that, in warfare, even the mightiest enemy could be brought down by a well-placed strike and a mind willing to see beyond the obvious. The fate of the Alliance now rested on his shoulders, and he was ready to unleash a strategy that would either save them all or be their final stand. As he closed his eyes to rest, Torres allowed himself a rare moment of reflection, aware that by morning, the first phase of his plan would begin. Dawn broke over the alien stronghold, casting a pale light over the assembled troops. Every soldier, regardless of their species, stood at attention as General Torres paced before them. The alien warriors, though diverse in appearance and culture, shared a single unifying expression: determination mixed with uncertainty. They had been briefed on their roles, but doubt lingered in their minds about the humans' plan. Torres, sensing the tension, stopped and addressed the troops. "I know many of you question my tactics. You wonder why we're not preparing a frontal assault or digging in for a final defense. But this battle isn't just about brute strength. It's about thinking 3 steps ahead of the enemy." His voice was calm, but carried an edge of steel. "The Zarlak believe they have us cornered. They expect us to cower, to react out of fear, but we're going to surprise them by making them chase us into a trap." A murmuring of assent rippled through the ranks. The troops were beginning to understand. They were not simply fighting to hold a position. They were part of a larger scheme, a masterstroke of strategy that relied on deception as much as it did on bravery. Torres turned his attention to the field commanders, detailing the first phase of the plan. They would split into small units, each tasked with luring the Zarlak forces into a series of strategically chosen choke points. "The Zarlak are strong, but they're slow to adapt. If we can get them to pursue us into these narrow passes and ravines, they'll be vulnerable to ambush." The insectoid warriors, with their innate digging abilities, would burrow tunnels beneath the battlefield, creating escape routes and hidden attack points. Torres had assigned the telepathic species to relay information across these units, allowing for a level of coordination that would normally be impossible in such fragmented formation. The plan was risky, but the alternative, conventional battle, was a guaranteed death sentence. As the soldiers prepared to move out, Torres reviewed the terrain maps with Talus Vorn, the elder statesman who had initially advocated for his recruitment. Talus studied the maps, his brow furrowed in concentration. "You're gambling everything on the assumption that they'll take the bait," he murmured. Torres met his gaze with a slight smile. "They will. The Zarlak can't resist an easy target, especially one that appears to be retreating. They've conquered countless worlds with brute force. They don't expect anyone to fight back in ways they can't predict." Talus nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. "And what of the final stage? You've told us how we'll weaken them, but not how you intend to finish the fight." "All in good time," Torres replied, his smile widening. "For now, just be ready." With the final preparations in place, Torres gave the signal, and the troops dispersed into the jungle. Moving silently through the dense foliage, the various units took up their positions along the predetermined routes. The alien warriors, normally accustomed to open conflict, found themselves relying on stealth and patience. For many, it was an uncomfortable departure from their usual methods, but Torres had instilled a sense of purpose in them that they hadn't felt in years. Hours passed as the troops lay in wait, concealed among the trees and underbrush. Finally, the distant rumble of the Zarlak's approach reached their ears, a low, vibrating hum that grew louder with each passing moment. Torres, hidden high in the branches of a massive tree, watched as the first wave of the Zarlak army emerged from the forest. The Zarlak were terrifying up close, towering scaled beasts with jagged teeth and eyes that glowed with an eerie, predatory light. They moved with a menacing grace. Their armor, a gleaming black that seemed to absorb the light, was both a testament to their technological prowess and a chilling reminder of their ruthlessness. Torres waited until the Zarlak were within range before signaling the first ambush. With a silent nod to the telepathic officers, he gave the command. The alien troops sprang into action, launching a volley of projectiles and energy blasts from hidden positions. Caught off guard, the Zarlak staggered, momentarily disoriented. Before they could recover, the ground beneath them erupted. The insectoid warriors had tunneled beneath the path, setting charges that detonated with a thunderous roar. Zarlak soldiers were thrown into the air, their armor shattered, their ranks momentarily scattered. Yet the Zarlak were quick to respond. With a guttural roar, they regrouped, their commanders barking orders as they prepared to counterattack. But just as they moved to engage, the Alliance soldiers had already disappeared into the jungle, retreating along the hidden tunnels and paths they had prepared in advance. Torres watched from his vantage point as the Zarlak fell into the trap. He had anticipated their reaction and had already set up the next ambush further down the line. His strategy was simple: hit hard, retreat, and lure the Zarlak deeper into the territory they thought they controlled but had already lost. For hours, the battle continued in this fashion. The Zarlak would advance, only to be met with a sudden barrage, a hidden explosive, or a deadly ambush. Each time they regrouped and pushed forward, but with every step, they lost more troops, their numbers slowly but surely dwindling. The alien soldiers, initially doubtful of Torres's tactics, began to see the effectiveness of his methods. They moved with renewed vigor, their confidence growing with each successful ambush. For the first time in years, they felt as though they had the upper hand. Torres's strategies, though unconventional, were turning the tide of the battle in their favor. As night began to fall, Torres regrouped with his commanders, assessing the day's progress. They had inflicted significant damage on the Zarlak, but the battle was far from over. The Zarlak, though weakened, were relentless, and they would not stop until they had crushed their enemies, or been crushed themselves. The real challenge begins tomorrow, Torres told the assembled commanders. Today was about softening them up, making them question their own strength. Tomorrow, we lead them into the final trap. His words hung in the air, a promise of what was to come. The commanders, weary but determined, nodded their understanding. They had followed Torres this far, and though the risks were great, they had no intention of turning back. The battle was far from over, but they knew they were in the hands of a strategist who saw beyond the immediate, who planned not just for survival, but for victory. As Torres looked out over the jungle, he allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The Zarlak were formidable, but they were not invincible, and with a well-placed strategy and a calculated hand, even the mightiest foes could be brought to their knees. The dawn of the second day arrived quietly, but beneath the stillness lay an air of tension as both sides prepared for the next clash. The Alliance troops had already dispersed, taking up new positions according to Torres's plan. He had spent the night mapping out the next phase, refining his strategy, and anticipating the Zarlak's likely response. His confidence in the alien troops grew as they adapted quickly to the guerrilla tactics he introduced, transforming the jungle into a battlefield that suited them rather than their towering enemies. The alien commanders gathered around Torres as he detailed the day's objective. The strategy was bold. They would use a tactical decoy to draw the Zarlak into an area that appeared to be an Alliance stronghold but was, in reality, a heavily trapped zone designed to decimate enemy ranks. Every detail had been planned, every path marked and accounted for. The decoy troops, including some of the most agile and stealthy soldiers, would be the bait to lure the Zarlak into the trap. Torres stood in front of the map display, which showed the projected route of the Zarlak forces. We've weakened them, but the Zarlak are relentless. They'll be on high alert after yesterday, so we need to make them feel as if they have the upper hand. They need to believe they're driving us into retreat. He pointed to a narrow gorge on the map. This is our kill zone. We'll funnel them into this area by making it look like a fallback point, complete with false fortifications and abandoned weapon caches. They'll see it as a chance to overrun us, but what they won't know is that every inch of that ground is rigged. The alien commanders studied the map, nodding in understanding. Some murmured in their own languages, but Torres could see that they were on board. The plan was daring, but that was exactly what the situation called for. Once they enter the gorge, Torres continued, we'll collapse the entry points with explosives. This will trap them inside, cut off from reinforcements, and surrounded by ambush points we've established. Our forces will be stationed along the ridges, ready to strike from above. The telepathic commander, Zarak, chimed in with a suggestion, his thoughts flowing directly into Torres's mind. We can use illusion drones to project images of fleeing soldiers deeper into the gorge, luring them further in. Good idea, Zarak, Torres replied, nodding. Deploy the drones to add to the chaos. The more confused they are, the better our chances. With the plan set, Torres sent the decoy troops ahead. These soldiers, dressed in what looked like hastily assembled armor, began to scatter debris and leave visible trails, setting up a scene that suggested a hasty retreat. They placed false footprints and broken weapons along the way, creating an illusion of desperation that would lure the Zarlak into a sense of overconfidence. As the morning wore on, the Zarlak forces approached, their massive figures pushing through the underbrush. Torres watched from his vantage point as the decoy troops, expertly trained in evasion, darted through the trees, firing occasional shots to draw attention. The Zarlak took the bait, roaring and charging forward, exactly as Torres had anticipated. The decoy soldiers led the Zarlak through a series of narrow trails and rocky paths, all leading toward the gorge. Every few minutes, they fired back at their pursuers, ensuring the Zarlak would continue to give chase. Torres could see the strategy unfolding perfectly. The Zarlak, driven by their desire for a swift victory, pressed onward, oblivious to the trap they were entering. As the lead Zarlak forces reached the entrance to the gorge, Torres gave the signal. Explosions erupted at either end, sending rocks and debris crashing down, effectively sealing them inside. The Zarlak forces were trapped, their escape routes cut off, and their ranks packed into the narrow gorge, making them vulnerable to the Alliance's ambush from above. Torres raised his communicator and signaled the troops stationed along the ridges. Phase 2. Engage. In an instant, Alliance forces emerged from the treetops and rock ledges, raining down a coordinated assault on the trapped Zarlak. Blasts of energy, spears, and projectiles bombarded the enemies below, catching them off guard. Torres's tactical decoy had succeeded. The Zarlak were pinned, unable to retaliate effectively in the tight confines of the gorge. Some of the Zarlak attempted to climb the walls of the gorge, but the Alliance soldiers, prepared for this, fired at the rocks, causing small landslides that forced the attackers back down. Others tried to return fire, but the dense crossfire from above made it nearly impossible for them to aim. The telepathic communication among the Alliance troops allowed for flawless coordination. Zarek directed squads to adjust their positions based on the Zarlak movements, while Torres kept an eye on the big picture, adjusting tactics as necessary. He could see that the Zarlak were struggling, their ranks thinning under the relentless assault. Then, something unexpected happened. A massive Zarlak warrior, larger than any Torres had seen before, let out a thunderous roar. With a powerful swing of its armored tail, it struck the walls of the gorge, creating cracks and small rockfalls. Torres realized that if this creature managed to break through, it could provide an escape route for the remaining Zarlak. Quickly, Torres called for reinforcements, directing them to concentrate fire on the giant Zarlak. The Alliance troops responded immediately, but the creature was formidable, withstanding multiple blasts. It seemed almost impervious to their attacks, advancing slowly but steadily toward the weakened section of the gorge wall. Thinking quickly, Torres signaled one of the heavy artillery units to bring down an entire section of the cliffside on top of the giant Zarlak. With precision timing, the artillery struck, sending a massive landslide cascading down onto the creature. For a moment, there was silence as the dust settled. When it cleared, the giant Zarlak was immobilized, buried beneath tons of rock. Seeing their champion defeated, the remaining Zarlak faltered. The Alliance troops seized the opportunity, launching a final assault that broke the Zarlak's morale. As the last of the Zarlak retreated, Torres ordered his troops to regroup. The day had been won, but the battle was far from over. In the aftermath, Torres surveyed the scene. The tactical decoy had worked, but he knew that the Zarlak were a resilient enemy. This victory had given the Alliance a significant advantage, but he was already planning the next phase. The Zarlak would not be defeated easily, and the final confrontation was yet to come. With the Alliance troops gathering around him, Torres prepared to lead them into the next stage of the campaign. They had proven themselves capable, and under his guidance, they were learning the true meaning of strategy. The Zarlak would not know what hit them. The stage was set for the ultimate showdown, and Torres was ready to finish what he had started. As the Alliance forces regrouped and tended to their wounded, Torres began crafting the next phase of his strategy. He knew that the Zarlak would not retreat for long. Their pride and territorial nature would drive them to retaliate with even greater force. However, Torres had no intention of waiting for them to strike. Instead, he planned to take the fight to the Zarlak's main stronghold. Torres gathered the alien commanders, briefing them on a daring plan that would require precise timing and coordination. They would use stealth to infiltrate the Zarlak's base, a heavily fortified encampment deep within the jungle. According to the intelligence Zirak had gathered, the stronghold was surrounded by natural defenses, thick vegetation, steep cliffs, and narrow passes that would make a direct assault suicidal. Our objective is simple, Torres explained, pointing to a holographic map. We'll use a small, highly mobile unit to infiltrate the base and disable their communications. Once their systems are down, we can sow chaos among their ranks and take them out in smaller groups. The alien commanders exchanged glances. Torres could see the doubt in their eyes, but also a glimmer of hope. They trusted him after the previous victory, but this mission would be the ultimate test of their combined strength and adaptability. Zarek stepped forward. How do you plan to get through their defenses without being detected? The Zarlak are vigilant. They have scouts patrolling constantly. That's where our advantage lies, Torres replied, a sly smile on his face. The Zarlak don't expect us to move through their territory undetected. They believe their sheer size and strength are enough to ward off any attacks. We're going to prove them wrong. The plan involved a series of diversions to draw the Zarlak scouts away from the base, while the main force created a series of false signals and decoy movements along the edges of the Zarlak territory. Torres and a select group of elite soldiers would slip through a hidden path Zarek had discovered. This path would lead them close to the Zarlak's command center. As they prepared for the mission, Torres gave each soldier a final rundown of their roles. He emphasized the importance of silence and precision. They were not to engage the enemy unless absolutely necessary. Every moment counted, and one slip-up could compromise the entire operation. With their equipment ready and nerves steel. The team moved out under the cover of darkness. The jungle was eerily silent, the only sounds being the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional distant roar of a Zarlak scout. The path was treacherous, with tangled roots and steep drops, but Torres and his team moved with the practiced stealth of seasoned warriors. As they approached the outer perimeter of the Zarlak base, Torres signaled for the team to halt. He surveyed the area, noting the positions of the patrols and the timing of their movements. Using hand signals, he directed his team to take cover and wait for the right moment to move. Every second stretched out, the tension palpable in the cool night air. When the patrols finally moved on, Torres led his team forward, slipping past the guards and into the heart of the Zarlak stronghold. They moved like shadows, avoiding detection as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. Eventually, they reached the communications hub, a heavily guarded structure surrounded by watchtowers and automated defenses. Torres assessed the situation, quickly formulating a plan to disable the defenses. He signaled to his demolition expert, an agile alien soldier named Yara, to prepare the explosives. Yara moved with practiced efficiency, setting charges on key structural points. Meanwhile, Torres and Zarak took out the guards with silent, coordinated strikes, neutralizing them before they could raise an alarm. With the explosives in place, the team retreated to a safe distance. Torres raised his hand, and with a silent countdown, he signaled Yara to detonate the charges. The resulting explosion reverberated through the jungle, lighting up the night sky and plunging the Zarlak's communications hub into chaos. The automated defenses shut down, and the watchtowers went dark. As expected, the Zarlak scrambled, disoriented and confused by the sudden loss of communication. Taking advantage of the chaos, Torres ordered his team to move deeper into the base, striking at key points and eliminating pockets of resistance. Their objective was not to take the base by force, but to cripple its operations and retreat before the Zarlak could regroup. They moved through the base like phantoms, each strike precise and devastating. Torres marveled at the teamwork and discipline of his alien allies. They had come a long way since he first joined them, and now they fought as a cohesive unit, each member complementing the others with their unique abilities. The mission was proceeding smoothly until they encountered a heavily armored Zarlak commander blocking their path. The creature towered over them, its massive frame nearly filling the corridor. It let out a guttural roar, brandishing a weapon that crackled with energy. Torres knew this would be a tough fight, but he also knew they couldn't back down. "Zarak, flank left! Yara, cover fire!" Torres barked, charging forward with his spear ready. The Zarlak commander swung its weapon, narrowly missing Torres as he ducked and rolled to the side. Zarak unleashed a barrage of telekinetic attacks, destabilizing the commander while Yara fired precision shots at its weak points. The fight was brutal, each blow shaking the ground and sending echoes through the corridor. The Zarlak commander fought fiercely, but Torres and his team were relentless. They moved in perfect harmony, their combined attacks wearing down the commander until, with a final thrust of his spear, Torres brought the creature down. Breathing heavily, Torres looked around at his team. They were battered, but victorious. He knew they had to move quickly. The Zarlak would soon realize the extent of the damage and send reinforcements. Signaling for the team to regroup, Torres led them back through the base, retracing their steps to the hidden path. As they made their escape, Torres glanced back at the smoldering remains of the communications hub. The mission had been a success. As dawn broke over the jungle, Torres and his team returned to the Alliance encampment, where they were met with cheers and gratitude. The alien soldiers and civilians alike gathered around, eager to hear the tales of their latest victory. But Torres had no time to rest on their laurels. He knew that the Zarlak would be planning their retaliation even as he spoke. Gathering the commanders, Torres outlined the final phase of his strategy. He had observed the Zarlak's tactics and noticed a pattern in their movements, a vulnerability that could be exploited. His plan was ambitious. He aimed to lure the Zarlak into a trap that would eliminate their remaining forces and, with it, their stronghold on the region. "The Zarlak are prideful," Torres explained, pointing to the holographic map. "They'll be desperate to regain control and avenge the loss we inflict. We'll use that against them. We'll draw them into this valley, where we've set up our defenses. They'll believe they have the advantage, but by the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late." The valley was a narrow passage surrounded by steep cliffs, a natural choke point that limited the Zarlak's ability to maneuver. Torres planned to fortify the valley with hidden artillery, traps, and explosive charges. As the Zarlak forces advanced, they would be funneled into a bottleneck, leaving them vulnerable to a coordinated assault from above and below. Torres worked tirelessly with the alien engineers and demolition teams, overseeing the placement of every trap and fortification. He knew this battle would be their last chance to secure freedom, and he was determined to make every detail count. As they prepared, Zerak approached him, concern etched into his alien features. "Are you sure this will work?" Zerak asked, his voice filled with unspoken fears. "The Zarlak are relentless. If they break through our defenses, we may not have the strength to repel them." "They won't break through," Torres replied, meeting Zerak's gaze with steely resolve. "We've got the element of surprise, and they're walking right into it. Trust me, Zerak, we've got this." As the final preparations were completed, Torres gathered his soldiers for a final briefing. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also the determination. They had come too far to turn back now, and they knew what was at stake. Torres spoke to them with the gravity of a leader who had fought beside them and understood their sacrifices. "This is it," he began, his voice carrying over the crowd. "The Zarlak believe they're invincible, that they can crush us with sheer force, but we've shown them that strength alone isn't enough. Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has suffered under their rule. We will use every skill, every ounce of courage, and we will emerge victorious." The soldiers responded with a cheer, their spirits bolstered by Torres's words. As they took their positions, Torres climbed to a vantage point on the cliffs above the valley, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the Zarlak forces would soon appear. He could feel the weight of the moment, the tension of anticipation, as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Soon enough, the ground began to tremble, the distant rumble of the Zarlak's heavy footfalls growing louder. The alien forces marched into the valley, their ranks seemingly endless, their armor glinting in the morning light. Torres signaled to his team to hold their fire, waiting for the perfect moment to spring the trap. When the bulk of the Zarlak forces were deep within the valley, Torres gave the order. Explosive charges detonated along the cliff walls, sending cascades of rock and debris crashing down onto the enemy. The Zarlak soldiers were thrown into chaos, as the narrow path they had entered became a death trap. With nowhere to run, and no cover from the assault above, Torres's soldiers unleashed a hail of artillery fire from hidden emplacements, targeting the Zarlak leaders, and sowing confusion among their ranks. The Zarlak tried to regroup, but every attempt was met with another wave of explosive traps and sniper fire from above. Torres directed his troops with precision, anticipating the enemy's moves and cutting off every avenue of escape. As the battle raged, Torres descended into the fray, fighting alongside his soldiers. His spear, now a symbol of their resistance, flashed through the air, striking down Zarlak warriors with unerring accuracy. Zerak and the other commanders joined him, their combined forces overwhelming the remaining Zarlak soldiers who, realizing their defeat, began to retreat. But Torres was not content to let them escape. He signaled his demolition teams to seal the valley, trapping the last of the Zarlak inside. With one final blast, the cliffs collapsed, blocking any hope of escape for the enemy. The echoes of the explosions faded, leaving only the silence of victory in their wake. As the dust settled, Torres stood amidst the remnants of the battlefield, surrounded by the bodies of fallen foes and the cheering of his comrades. He felt the weight of exhaustion, but also the thrill of triumph. They had done it. Against all odds, they had defeated the Zarlak and secured freedom for the Alliance. Zerak approached him, offering a respectful nod. "You did it, Torres. You led us to victory. The Alliance will never forget this day." "It wasn't just me," Torres replied, looking around at the soldiers who had fought beside him. "We did this together. Each one of us played a part, and we'll remember those who didn't make it. They fought for a future they'll never see, but their sacrifice won't be in vain." In the days that followed, the Alliance forces began the task of rebuilding. They honored their fallen, celebrated their heroes, and looked to the future with hope. Torres, though weary, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had found his purpose here, among these brave warriors from worlds he had once thought of as strange and distant. As he prepared to leave, Zerak joined him once more. "What will you do now, Torres?" "I'll find another battle, another cause," Torres replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "There are still places that need help, people who need someone to fight for them. This galaxy is a big place, and I'm just getting started." With one last look at the jungle where he had found both his greatest challenge and his greatest victory, Torres set off, ready for whatever lay ahead. He had become a legend, a symbol of resilience and cunning, known throughout the stars as the man who could turn the tide of any battle with a single, unseen hand.